Yo, what's going on, guys? Mush back at it with another video. I want to highlight a really interesting story that's making the rounds about Lords of the Fallen 2 and its Epic Game Store exclusivity, as there are rumors and reports going around that CI Games has approved a capital raise authorization. That has already happened. The reasoning for this authorization, that is what's being speculative. Now, Marek Tominsky tweeted, today's extraordinary general meeting approved the proposed capital raise authorization, a key step forward. This flexibility allows the company to accelerate distribution channels and strengthen its position for upcoming releases, including Lords of the Fallen 2. Once executed, it positions CI Games for higher potential profits and improved valuation. Pure win-win for shareholders and the company's short and long-term growth. Then there was a post on Gaming Leaks and Rumors that broke this down quite a bit, and I'll give a link to that in the description box below. Lords of the Fallen 2 was announced to be an Epic Game Store exclusive before it was revealed, but once again confirmed when the game was officially revealed 5 months ago. Following backlash at the decision, the CEO of CI Games spent the majority of 2025 defending the decision, stating that Epic made a considerable investment in the project. That I totally believe. Epic Game Store pays a lot of money for those exclusives. However, if you actually look at the track record, Epic Game Store has been far more selective in what exclusives they're getting. I don't know if it's because publishers were asking for more money, if they didn't find the return on investment worth it, but look at the exclusives they were getting in like 2020, 2021, 2022, and look at the exclusives they get now. Over the last year, I want to say, like, the only exclusive they've gotten off the top of my head is, like, Blades of Fire. And it's like, bro, that's Blades of Fire. Before, they were literally getting Metro Exodus, Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. They were getting Final Fantasy VII Remake on PC, not coming out on Steam for 6 months. And I don't know exactly how the agreement was worked on this, but remember when Red Dead Redemption 2 came out on PC? RDR2 did not come out on Steam for like 2 or 3 weeks. It came out first on the Epic Game Store and the Rockstar launcher. Now, I'm not here to say Epic Game Store paid for something like that, but, I wouldn't rule that possibility out. And you just look at that over and over again, relative to where they are now. Yes, they invested a lot into Alan Wake 2 and getting that game out in the market, but remember, Alan Wake 2 was probably greenlit when? 2019, 2020, and then it came out in 2023. But remember, the decision to greenlight that game was made well before it actually came out. So if you actually have been studying it, Epic Game Store has not been offering the level of exclusives that they once did, and who knows the reasoning for that is? Nobody has really come out. Tim Sweeney hasn't ever talked about that, but certainly anybody with eyes can notice, okay, you went from Stranger of Paradise, Saints Row, even if Saints Row was garbage, it was still, notable IP. Metro Exodus, Final Fantasy VII Remake, I can go on and on to Blades of Fire in the last year, and that's the one that I can remember, and now Lords of the Fallen 2 is a notable one, but again, far lesser in terms of quantity and I would say IP level than what we would get in the past. He also noted that they were fantastic partners in the game, and CI Games' independence would not be possible without their backing of Lords of the Fallen 2. It was a permanent Epic exclusive. He also stated that content would always beat out the way of access, and that real sales that approve that PC players will buy a specific game on Epic if it's exclusive there. Alright, like, I don't know about that. I'm sure there are games that do well on Epic, but generally speaking, I would love to see data. Like, I would love, if you're gonna make a statement like that, I would love to see transparent data, but we don't have that. I want to see particularly, how did Kingdom Hearts sell on Epic Game Store, and how did it sell on Steam? And it came out on Steam years after at a very hefty price point. How did Final Fantasy VII Remake sell on Epic Game Store, and how did it sell on Steam? I love to have that data, but guess what? We don't have that data, so it's a moot point for now. Nonetheless, almost every piece of media about Lords of the Fallen 2, as well as the CEO's comments, have been filled with people pleading for a Steam release and outright stating that if the decision comes down to buying on Epic or not buying it at all, they would rather choose the latter. And yeah, I think that is the case for a lot of people, and you could say it's me being mad at Epic. It's not just my opinion. We don't have hard data to prove it, but I don't think it's a coincidence that the quality of exclusives has fallen off a cliff in terms of quantity and quality that Epic Game Store is going after. And on top of that, just, you know, sometimes the online discourse is an echo chamber, but I think you really have to separate that sometimes, and you can tell with Epic Game Store and it getting exclusives, a lot of the times people are not going on over to Epic to buy their games because the reality is there are only so many games that are true system sellers or platform sellers. That's essentially the same thing with what Epic tries to do with getting exclusives. They are platform sellers that aren't shifting the identity of the platform. That's not doing that at all, but are these games big enough for people to gravitate onto Epic Game Store? And I would argue that they aren't. Even Lords of the Fallen 2, and I think the game looks pretty solid. That's not that level of a game, and the reality is in 2026, there are far fewer of those than ever before because the amount of sheer options on top level and high quality games are greater than ever. Yes, will a Grand Theft Auto 6, is that a potential platform seller? Absolutely. Is a Marvel's Wolverine a platform seller? Yes, games of that level can be platform sellers. Lords of the Fallen 2, on the other hand, I would argue is not. And a lot of the times it's not just one game, it's the collective of the games that are available. And does Epic Game Store have that for people to invest their $60, $70 on the platform? I don't think so. At least not with Lords of the Fallen 2. Fast forward to this weekend, the CEO posts on his Twitter and X stating that the company has approved a capital raise authorization. He claims that the raised capital allows the company to accelerate distribution channels and that it would position the company for higher potential profits on upcoming releases, specifically mentioning Lords of the Fallen 2. Also, he's been recently seen liking comments that mention Lords of the Fallen 2 being on Steam, and specifically has liked 2 replies under the authorization announcement. One that says, okay, release it on Steam then, and another says, hopefully that means Lords of the Fallen 2 can come to PC as well eventually and not be an Epic Game Store exclusive. Definitely a little bit of a different tone than what was there before. This would be a big deal for Lords of the Fallen 2, and I think people cannot understand just how important being available on Steam and every platform is, and being locked away to Epic Game Store does a lot of damage, and it's unquantifiable damage because it's a hypothetical world if the game comes out on the Epic Game Store and not on Steam initially. But remember that the launch of a game is generally when there's going to be the most amount of discourse around a game. That's when most people are going to be streaming a game, talking about a game. So even if it comes out on a delay, and yeah, you can discount it, you could do this or that, and it could come out on Steam and it can sell a few copies, that's fine, but it will be bumped down a level lower. It absolutely will. Like, that's just how this thing works, and that's why Square Enix is not releasing Final Fantasy VII Remake, the trilogy, as an exclusive, a PlayStation exclusive anymore. They're going with a multi-platform release, and they're so aggressive in getting these games out, because when you sign exclusivity deals, yes, that upfront money can be so great, and a lot of the times, it can be what makes these games come to fruition, and if that's the case, fair play to you. That's why I haven't bugged out and moaned that much about Alan Wake 2 potentially coming to Steam, but it absolutely creates a ceiling for the game in terms of its attention. It also creates a ceiling for how much that IP can grow, and that can potentially affect future games as well. Let's say Remedy greenlights an Alan Wake 3. Well, now all of these PC players, if Alan Wake 2 never comes out on Steam and maybe Alan Wake 3 does come out on Steam, what, are they just going to jump right into Alan Wake 3? I'm sure some will, but I do think some people will not, and that will lessen the appeal of the IP. There are a lot of unquantifiable consequences that come with timed exclusivity and exclusivity deals that is difficult to assess, and I do think it's more damaging than in a vacuum of, oh, you don't get these sales now, you'll ultimately get the sales on Steam anyway. It's more than that, and I do think it's something worthwhile talking about. And again, I get that Epic Game Store offers a lot of money. It's probably a sizable chunk of change, but you know what would be great? If it was a sizable chunk of change and maybe it drops on the Epic Game Store, and given that Epic Games is so pro-developer, you know, you offer that sizable chunk of change, and then on the Epic Game Store, you know, maybe you offer some additional content, or you offer some in-game cosmetics, things of that nature to incentivize people to play on the Epic Game Store. But if you really do care about the developers and the ceiling of the game and how popular this IP can be, then let them release it on Steam as well, because that's ultimately going to help the IP and the ceiling of how big Lords of the Fallen can be. I'm not saying Lords of the Fallen is ever going to be a Dark Souls or anything like that, but I like Lords of the Fallen 2023, even if it was a technical disaster, and I do think there's a lot of potential in the sequel, and hopefully it does end up being released on Steam. But I found this story to be rather interesting. What do you guys think? Interested to hear from you guys and your thoughts on exclusivity and everything like that. I know Lords of the Fallen 2 is a game with a little bit of controversy around it as well, but we'll talk that in a separate video. That'll do it for me. Your thoughts down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out. Hey, what's going on, guys? Mush here again. Hope you enjoyed the video. As you guys might know, YouTube's notification system is sometimes a little bit wonky, even if you're subscribed to the channel. Maybe you're not abundantly aware that I uploaded a video. To remedy that situation, make sure you hit the bell notification button. This way, whenever I upload a new video, and I try to upload as consistently as possible, you will be notified directly of the upload, and you can watch it as soon as it goes live. I would really appreciate if you guys hit that button so you can stay up to date with all of the content I'm posting. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.